Hello YouTube, welcome to D&D Daily. Today I'm doing a deep dive into the Twilight Domain Cleric subclass. In this video I will be discussing its features, its strengths and its weaknesses, and kind of going into a bit of a build at the end. Before getting into these videos I like to discuss my attitude about subclasses. I like to find what only the subclass can pull off and make my build around that unique flavor. So if there's something the subclass does that's not as good as what the normal cleric does, I'll still do what the subclass does, even if it's not the most optimal. But without further ado, let's jump into the Twilight Domain Cleric. At level 1 we get proficiency in heavy armor and martial weapons, as well as the Eyes of the Night and the Vigilant Blessing features, as well as the Sleep and Fairy Fire spells. What heavy armor ultimately means for us is that we can have a +1 to AC, and strength-based builds are viable to us. Martial weapons are a nice little boon, but I don't consider them a huge difference from what we were already doing. But the thing is that a shield is always going to be more optimal than any great weapon. So ultimately, it's really changing us from a D6 to a D8 at the end of the day if we're using a shield. Moving on to our features, we get Eyes of the Night. Eyes of the Night gives us dark vision out to 300 feet, and it also allows us to share that dark vision with our allies. The amount of times we can share it and the amount of people we can share it scales with our prof bone. Something really notable about this feature is it's the only base feature that breaks the 120 foot cap on dark vision. It didn't just double it, it nearly tripled it. Now moving on to the sharing aspect, if you consider that dark vision is a second level spell that is commonly cast, which gives us a shorter range dark vision to fewer people for more of a cost, you start to realize how powerful this ability really is. This is so much better than any other dark vision that it begins to feel strange, like it's an outlier. Why does the Twilight Domain have better vision than the Shadow Sorcerer or the Shadow Monk, who are designed to work in the dark? Or the Gloomstalker? Twilight still has light, it's even in the name. So why are they such dark specialists? It feels weird to me, it feels like a strange design choice. But whatever, moving on. Vigilant Blessing allows us to give one of our allies, including ourselves, advantage on the next initiative roll. So one person for every combat. Again, putting this in perspective, barbarians are able to give themselves only advantage at 7th level. We're giving advantage to anybody at 1st level. Again, strange decision making here on the designer's parts. And don't underestimate how much it matters giving away initiative. Handpicking the person in your team who is going to be best at starting out the combat is insanely good. Putting it on a spellcaster who can cast a mass control spell is going to have massive effect if they start before any of the enemies start. This is a huge boon that barbarians can never match even at level 7. So for some reason, this 1st level cleric's doing what a 7th level barbarian is trying to do way better. I don't like that, but it is what it is. Fairy Fire is going to be a 1st level fight winning spell. That proactive spell you cast once per fight to just hopefully get you over the finish line. And it's going to be good for the first few levels of the game, but once it falls off, it'll always be good at revealing invisible targets, so it always will have a use case in your back pocket. We also get Sleep. Sleep is a premier 1st level spell. It's going to be amazing. It's simply just going to win fights when 1st and 2nd level, and then it's going to fall off dramatically after that. Better than even Fairy Fire, better than Bless, better than anything. It's going to win fights at 1st and 2nd level. By 3rd, you'll probably never use it again. Before moving on, I just want to point out that this is one of the craziest 1st level classes in the game. Not only relative to clerics, but relative to all subclasses. It's super heavily front-loaded. And it's strange to me that not only do they get massively more powerful 1st level features than many of their cleric counterparts, they also get more. I just don't understand that. They get spells, they get heavy armor proficiency, they get martial weapon proficiency, then they get 2 features. Look at the Trickery Domain Cleric. It gets 1 okay feature at that level. That's it. It doesn't get the heavy armor, it doesn't get the martial weapons, it doesn't get the amazing features, and it doesn't get another amazing feature on top of that. The difference between a Trickery Domain at 1st level and a Twilight Domain at 1st level is so dramatic, it's perplexing. And here's where it gets crazier, is level 2 is no different. Moving on to our Channel Divinity, Twilight Sanctuary. As an action, we turn on a 30-foot aura. The light in this aura is dim and lasts for 1 minute. Whenever a creature ends its turn in the sphere, including ourselves, we can either grant them 1d6 plus our cleric level of temporary HP, or end an effect causing them to be charmed or frightened. Again, putting this ability into perspective, Aura of Vitality is a 3rd level spell that heals. And it is not just worse than this Channel Divinity, it gets absolutely blown out of the water by this Channel Divinity. I would put this Channel Divinity in the range of a 4th to 5th level spell. It is simply the most efficient temporary HP generator in the game, and on top of that, it's attached to a near immunity to the charmed and frightened condition. This is insane. It's maybe even a 6th level spell. It's absolutely crazy. This feature alone means your DM is going to have to crank the difficulty up. They're going to have to put your whole team against a different CR creature because it's that good. And the problem with that is, what if you don't use this ability and you're going up against that same CR creature? Well, now you guys are boned because the damage is going to absolutely decimate you. It's one of those features that as a DM I look at as a balancing nightmare. And again, I want to compare this to other Channel Divinities. Take a look at the Forge Domains. They're maybe making 100 gold here and there. This is breaking the game. It's absolutely nutty what they've done with this character in the first 2 levels. Blows my mind. At 3rd level, we get Moonbeam and See Invisibility. Moonbeam is going to be a fight-winning spell for levels 3 and 4, and then it's going to fall off and basically never be used again. By the time we hit 5th level, our cantrips are basically as good as it, and it still is going to require concentration and take up our action economy. So there's just so much better we can be doing with this, but there's a slight window where it will be useful. Now that being said, it will always ruin a shape changer's day, so again, kind of like Fairy Fire, it will fall out of use, but will always have an additional use that will never age. So it'll be in our back pocket until a shape changer pops up. See Invisibility is a nice hard counter to obviously invisible creatures, but it has great synergy with Fairy Fire. So we're not guessing where we're putting our Fairy Fire. We see the invisible person, now we can use Fairy Fire so the rest of our allies can see it. And it's another great spell that's just in your back pocket until needed. You're not going to take See Invisibility often, but you're probably going to need it at some point, and now you'll have it. At level 5, we get Aura of Vitality and Lehman's Tiny Hut. Aura of Vitality is largely outshone by our Channel Divinity, but it can be useful as an out-of-combat heal. And then there's Lehman's Tiny Hut, which is one of the best rituals in the game. So good that I don't particularly like this spell. It takes the sleeping in the outdoors and changes it to, we're just protected, nothing can get through, except certain spellcasters and creatures that can dig out from under the ground, which limits the threats we can throw at our party as a DM. So it is good, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic, but it's so good that it's kind of boring to me. Now the flavor text of the Twilight Domain Cleric says that they are all about changing the darkness of night to feel comfortable and safe as opposed to feeling scary. And I think Lehman's Tiny Hut actually really fits that flavor. So I may not personally love this spell, but I do think they nailed the flavor on it. At level 6, we get Steps of the Night. Steps of the Night gives us non-concentration flight, so long as we're in dark or dim light. This has excellent synergy with Twilight Sanctuary, because Twilight Sanctuary puts us in dim light, so Twilight Sanctuary also lets us fly now. Just putting that out there. Non-concentration flight is always good. It's always super amazing. You want it on every single character you can get it on, especially spellcasters. The fact that we activate it as a bonus action just makes it that much better. It's not even going to be interrupting our action economy in very significant ways. This is something clerics really don't get otherwise, so it's really good. The exception to that is the Tempest Domain Cleric, who gets it at 17th level and can't overrule its restriction. It has heavier restrictions. It seems like the Twilight Domain Cleric is stepping on some other classes' toes again. At level 7, we get the Aura of Life and Greater Invisibility spells. Greater Invisibility is crazy good. Full stop. End of discussion. Insanely good for both offense and defense. It simply represents one of the best buffs in the game. Aura of Life is super situational, but hey, it'll be in your back pocket for if that situation ever comes up. At level 8, I'm choosing Blessed Strikes because we might be flying, so we're probably going to be using cantrips. We're not always going to be melee smacking people, so Blessed Strikes is just the better option for me. And the flavor is the exact same, so really what are you losing? I will just say, like, as a general note, Blessed Strikes is almost always the choice. If you're ever confused about Blessed or Divine, just go Blessed. It's almost always better, and there needs to be a good reason to ever go Divine, and that reason usually turns out to be flavor for me. At level 9, we get Circle of Power and Mislead. Circle of Power is a Paladin exclusive spell that they don't get until level 17, so by default, we are the best Circle of Power user in the game. For the right combat, this spell simply just ends it. And those combats can be some of the hardest combats in the game. I am specifically talking about combats against mages. So yeah, fight-winning spell for very specific fights, but big fights. Really great spell, really great addition to our list. Then there's Mislead, which kind of comes out of nowhere. I mean, all of a sudden we're doing some illusion stuff. This really feels like it should be on the Trickery Domain Cleric, but here it is. It's a fun spell that combines an illusion with invisibility, so you can pull the Loki, where you're like walking down a hallway and you turn left, but it looks like you turn left, but you really went invisible and your illusion went left while you go right. I really like this spell out of combat. It's really cool, has awesome flavor. I just don't think it belongs on the Twilight Domain Cleric spell list. At level 17, we get Twilight Shroud. This upgrades our Channel Divinity to also get partial cover, meaning that all of our allies now get a +2 AC. At this level, this isn't crazy. It's good, it's not insane, which, thank you, it's our first not insane ability coming in at 17th level. While writing this script, my intention was to come into it unbiased, just to give the facts without letting my personal opinion bleed through. And I believe I have failed in that regard. It was simply designed on another scale than the rest of the game was. It's such an outlier on the strong side, it just feels wrong to me. So when I look at this class, my biased thought is that, it's going to ruin the fun for the players at the table because it steps on so many people's toes. The Barbarian's gonna be like, oh, cool, I just got my 7th level feature, which lets me have advantage on initiative rolls. The Cleric's been doing that since level 1. The Tempest Domain Cleric's gonna be like, oh, I can fly now at 17th level. The Twilight Domain Cleric's been doing that for 11 levels now. Anyone who's trying to give some temporary hit points, Inspiring Leaders, the Celestial Warlocks, they're just going to be outweighed by how good Twilight Shroud is. That's my biased thought. My biased thought is that this subclass ruins fun. It makes the balance for DMs hard, but when I check that bias and I look at it from a different angle, it might be fun for the party to have a bunch of extra tankiness that comes from that temporary HP. They feel stronger and more resilient. And it might feel good that your character usually doesn't have great dark vision, but now, because you have a Twilight Domain Cleric, when needed, you can have some really amazing dark vision. And what's more important in D&D than having fun? My bias looks at Mislead, greater invisibility, and Steps of the Night and says, the flavor for this subclass is all over the place. It doesn't know what it wants to be. When I check that bias, I can see that this character's job is to make people feel safe in the dark. We're the superhero lookout that keeps everyone safe, and going along with that, Layman's Tiny Hut, the ability to give away dark vision and to see invisibility, really does go with that flavor. When I'm this biased, I can't trust my own judgments, so I will simply leave you the facts. If you want power, more power than is normal in this game, you will find it in the Twilight Domain Cleric. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I'll leave up to you. At the end of the day, this feels like mostly a normal cleric for me. At first and second level, we have a very powerful sleep option and a really powerful make our whole team tanky option. That tanky option continues into third and fourth levels where we're really relying on Moonbeam. And then at fifth level, we just continue taking that tankiness combined with our Spirit Guardians. At 6th level, we add flying to the mix, and that's really the biggest change to our tactical options. Now we can fly above enemies with our Spirit Guardians, and they kind of get put in this blender that they can't escape if they don't have any ranged or teleportation options. And I will say that by the end of the campaign, the Twilight Domain Cleric isn't going to feel terrible. I feel like in tiers 1 through 3, maybe up to 15th level, it's going to feel really stinking powerful, and past that, it'll kind of be balanced out at that point, and other classes can go ahead and exceed it. But it takes so much time, and it comes on so strong that it's just a subclass that you as a DM and as a player, you just need to be aware of and be careful of. So the last thing I'll say in this video is if your DM decides to nerf your Twilight Domain Cleric, don't take it offensively. It's a really powerful and imbalanced class, and they're doing it for a reason. Trust them that it's not personal. So this has been my more pessimistic than normal take on the Twilight Domain Cleric. I want to hear what you guys think, though. More than ever, I want to hear what you guys think about this subclass. Do you guys agree with me that its balance is super wonky? Or do you feel like I'm missing something, that there's more perspective that I can be gained on this subclass? Let me know in the comments down below. We are D&D Daily. We release new D&D content every single day, so if that's interesting to you, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one. Later.